Husband let his mother and sister treat me like help for years, mocking me. I snapped during dinner and finally left him for good. Hello everyone on Reddit. I'm hoping for some perspective here because my head is still spinning a little bit, even though some time has passed. I am Alice, 29 years old, and my now ex-husband, let's call him Mark, is 32. We were together for 6 years, married for 3 of those. We met in our mid-20s through mutual friends and things moved relatively quickly, maybe too quickly in hindsight. His mother, Carol, who is in her early 60s, and his sister, Skylar, who is 30, are central figures in this whole mess. I guess some friends might recognize this story even with names changed, but honestly at this point, I don't even care that much. When Mark and I first started dating, things were pretty great. He was charming, attentive, seemed genuinely interested in my life and my career in graphic design. We shared similar interests, loved hiking, trying new restaurants, and binge-watching sci-fi shows. His family seemed nice enough initially. Carol was always very put together, maybe a little formal, and Skylar was bubbly, though sometimes her energy felt a bit forced. The first few family dinners were okay, typical getting-to-know-you stuff. I remember Carol asking a lot of questions about my family background and my job, which felt a little like an interrogation, but I brushed it off as her just being protective of her son. Skylar mostly talked about herself, her job in marketing, her social life, which was fine, I guess. The subtle digs started after Mark and I got engaged. We were visiting his parents for Sunday lunch. I had offered to bring dessert and made a lemon tart from scratch, something I genuinely enjoyed doing. When I presented it, Carol picked at it with her fork and said something like, "Oh, it is homemade." "It is. Rustic-looking, Alice." Skylar chimed in, "Yeah, Mom makes the best lemon meringue. Maybe you can get her recipe sometime, wink wink." Mark just chuckled awkwardly and changed the subject. I felt a sting but told myself I was being too sensitive. They probably did not mean anything by it. Oh, how wrong I was. After we got married, the frequency and intensity of their comments increased dramatically. We bought a small house about 30 minutes away from his parents, which Mark thought was a good compromise. Close enough for visits, far enough for space. Or so I thought. Carol and Skylar started dropping by unannounced. Carol would walk in and immediately start pointing out things that needed cleaning or tidying, even though I keep a pretty clean house. She would run her finger along a bookshelf and sigh dramatically about the dust. Skylar would critique my decor choices, calling them interesting or suggesting pieces that were completely not my style, but coincidentally, exactly like things in her own apartment. The real fun began during family gatherings, which happened frequently. Holidays, birthdays, random Sunday dinners, they always seemed to be at Carol's house. Or eventually, they insisted on having them at our place because Carol decided her house was too big to manage for hosting anymore, even though she had hosted flawlessly for decades. This basically meant I became the designated host, chef, and cleanup crew, while Carol and Skylar sat back and supervised, offering helpful suggestions like, "Alice, are you sure you should use that much salt? And don't you think the table would look better with the blue napkins, not these beige ones?" Mark was utterly useless in these situations. When I would try to talk to him about it later, he would usually say things like, "They don't mean it like that, Alice, that's just how they are, or you are reading too much into it, they love you." Sometimes he would even get defensive, asking why I was trying to cause problems with his family. He would say his mom had a hard life raising him and Skylar after his dad passed away young, and that I needed to be more understanding. While I sympathized with their past loss, it felt like it was being used as a perpetual excuse for their current bad behavior towards me. It was classic gaslighting, making me question my own perception of reality. Did they really love me while simultaneously making me feel inadequate and small? It did not add up. My cooking became a particular target. I enjoy cooking and I think I am pretty decent at it. I love experimenting with new recipes. But according to Carol and Skylar, everything I made was either too bland, too spicy, too exotic, undercooked, overcooked, or just not as good as how Carol used to make it. One Thanksgiving, I spent 2 days prepping and cooking. I made turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, gravy, green bean casserole, sweet potato casserole, cranberry sauce, multiple pies, the works. I was exhausted but proud. As everyone sat down, Carol took a bite of the stuffing and visibly grimaced. She looked at Mark and said, "Mark, honey, does this taste a little off to you?" Skylar immediately jumped in, "Yeah, it is kind of dry, isn't it?" "Not like yours, Mom." I felt my face flush red. I had followed a well-reviewed recipe exactly. Mark just mumbled something noncommittal like, "It tastes fine to me, Mom," but he did not defend me. He did not tell them they were being rude or that my cooking was great. He just let their comments hang in the air while I felt like shrinking into my chair. The rest of the meal continued with similar passive-aggressive critiques of nearly every dish I had painstakingly prepared. It was not just cooking. They criticized my job. Graphic design apparently wasn't a real career in their eyes. Carol would often ask, "When are you going to get a proper job, dear? Maybe something in an office." Skylar would talk endlessly about her important marketing presentations and client meetings, subtly implying my work designing logos and websites from my home office was insignificant. They criticized my clothes, my hair, even how I loaded the dishwasher. Yes, apparently there is a right way, Carol's way, and my way was fundamentally wrong. Mark's complicity was the worst part. He saw how they treated me. He heard the comments, but he rarely, if ever, stood up for me. His go-to move was avoidance or downplaying. If I got visibly upset during one of their visits, he would pull me aside later and tell me to just let it go for the sake of peace. Peace for whom? Certainly not for me. My peace was constantly being disrupted. His desire to avoid conflict with his mother and sister always outweighed his supposed commitment to our partnership. It made me feel incredibly lonely and unsupported within my own marriage. I tried setting boundaries. I suggested we limit visits or that we host less often. Mark would agree in principle, but then Carol would call, sounding sad about how she never saw her precious son, and Mark would cave instantly. We would end up at their place, or they would be at ours, and the cycle would repeat. I tried talking to Carol and Skylar directly once, calmly explaining how their comments sometimes hurt my feelings. Carol feigned shock and offense, saying she would never intentionally hurt me and that I was being overly sensitive. Skylar just rolled her eyes and said I needed to toughen up. It was useless. They twisted it to make me seem like the unreasonable one. The breaking point came about 6 months ago. It was Mark's birthday, and despite my reservations, I agreed to host a dinner party at our house. Mark had specifically asked me to make it special, inviting not just Carol and Skylar, but also a few of his aunts, uncles, and cousins. About 15 people in total. I spent the entire week planning, shopping, cleaning, and prepping. I took 2 days off work to focus on it. I wanted, stupidly perhaps, to prove to them and maybe to myself that I could be the perfect host, the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law. The day of the party was pure chaos. Carol and Skylar arrived early, ostensibly to help, but mostly they just got in the way and criticized. Carol rearranged the table setting I had spent an hour on. Skylar kept wandering into the kitchen while I was trying to time everything perfectly, asking endless questions and offering unsolicited advice. "Can I taste the sauce? Are you sure that's enough garlic? Maybe you should add more cream." It was driving me insane. As guests started arriving, I was frantically trying to finish the main course. Mark was mingling, playing the happy host, completely oblivious or indifferent to the stress I was under. I had asked him specifically to manage the drinks and appetizers, but he got caught up in conversations and completely forgot, leaving me to juggle cooking, serving drinks, and making small talk. Dinner was finally served. I had made beef Wellington, a notoriously tricky dish, hoping to impress everyone. I had practiced it twice in the weeks leading up. As I brought it to the table, sliced and plated, I felt a flicker of hope. It looked beautiful. Then Skylar piped up loudly, "Oh wow, Alice, beef Wellington, ambitious. Hope it is not too pink inside." Carol added, "Or too dry. It's so easy to overcook puff pastry." I took a deep breath and sat down, trying to ignore them. But the comments continued throughout the meal, directed not just at the food but at everything. My dress was apparently a bit too revealing for a family gathering, according to an aunt, prompted by a whispered comment from Carol. The wine I chose was okay, but not as good as the one Uncle Albert brought last time. My attempts at conversation were often interrupted or redirected by Skylar. Mark, as usual, was swimming in blissful denial, laughing with his cousins, accepting birthday compliments, occasionally throwing me a strained smile that I interpreted as "keep it together, don't make a scene." The final straw came during dessert. I had made Mark's favorite chocolate lava cakes with raspberry coulis. As I served them, Skylar took a bite and declared, "Mine is completely overcooked. The center is solid." She dramatically pushed her plate away. "Mine too," Carol echoed, peering into her cake. "It's more like a chocolate hockey puck, dear." Several other relatives awkwardly mumbled that theirs were fine, but the damage was done. Skylar looked directly at me, a smug little smirk on her face. Maybe stick to store-bought next time, Alice. Easier and probably tastier. Something inside me just snapped. After years of biting my tongue, absorbing the criticism, feeling undermined and unsupported, I just could not take it anymore. All the resentment, the hurt, the anger I had suppressed for so long boiled over. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The entire table fell silent, all eyes on me. I looked at Skylar, then at Carol, their surprised faces barely concealing their usual malice. Then I looked at Mark. He had a deer-in-headlights expression, likely fearing the scene I was about to make on his precious birthday. In that moment, clarity hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't my family. This wasn't love or support. This was a toxic, abusive dynamic that I had allowed myself to be trapped in, facilitated by my own husband's weakness and complicity. I did not yell. I did not cry. My voice was eerily calm but firm. I said, "You know what, Skylar? You are absolutely right. Store-bought would have been easier. Everything would have been easier if I hadn't spent years trying to win the approval of people who are fundamentally incapable of kindness or respect. Especially when my own husband can't even be bothered to defend me." I turned to Mark. "Happy birthday. I hope you enjoy the rest of your party, hosted and catered by your personal servant, because she just quit, effective immediately." I picked up my purse from the sideboard where I had left it. Carol started sputtering, "Alice, don't be ridiculous." Skylar looked shocked, maybe even a little scared that her bullying had finally pushed me over the edge. Mark just stared, mouth agape. I walked towards the front door. Mark finally seemed to realize what was happening and scrambled up, calling my name. "Alice, wait, don't do this. Where are you going?" I paused at the door, turned back to look at the stunned faces around the dining table, and then met Mark's panicked eyes. "I am going somewhere I feel respected, Mark. Which means I am going anywhere but here." I opened the door and walked out into the night, leaving him, his family, and the remnants of our disastrous marriage behind me. I got in my car and drove to my sister's place, my hands shaking but my heart feeling lighter than it had in years. So Reddit, that's the story. I walked out on my husband's birthday dinner party in front of his entire family after years of mistreatment by him, his mother, and his sister. I haven't looked back since. I filed for divorce shortly after. Part of me feels liberated and proud, but another, smaller part wonders if I went too far by doing it so publicly. Was I the asshole for finally snapping and walking out like that? Update 1. Wow, okay. My phone has been absolutely exploding since I posted this yesterday. Thank you all so much for the overwhelming support and validation. Reading your comments has been incredibly therapeutic. It seems the consensus is overwhelmingly not the asshole, which honestly helps quiet that tiny voice of doubt I mentioned. So many of you shared similar stories about toxic in-laws and unsupportive partners, and while it is sad that this is so common, it is also comforting to know I am not alone. A lot of you asked what happened immediately after I left. Well, my sister welcomed me with open arms, a big hug, and a glass of wine. She had known about the issues with Mark's family for years and had been urging me to stand up for myself or leave, so she was incredibly supportive. I stayed with her for a few weeks while I found my own apartment. Mark, predictably, lost his mind after I left the party. My sister told me he called my phone maybe 50 times that night. He left frantic voicemails, swinging wildly between angry accusations that I ruined his birthday and pathetic pleas for me to come back and talk. Then came the texts, a barrage of them. Some were apologetic, saying he realized he messed up and didn't appreciate me. Others were blaming me again, saying I overreacted and embarrassed him in front of everyone. It was a real roller coaster of manipulation tactics. Carol and Skylar also tried to reach out, which surprised me. Carol sent a stiffly formal text message saying my behavior was shocking and uncalled for, and that I owed Mark and the family an apology. Skylar actually called me, which I did not answer. She left a voicemail that sounded less smug and more flustered. She said something like, "Look, Alice, maybe we were a little hard on you sometimes, but leaving like that was really messed up. You made Mark really upset. Come on, don't be like this." It felt less like an apology and more like an attempt to control the situation and get me back under their thumb, probably because my departure made them look bad. I did not respond to any of them directly at first. I blocked Carol and Skylar's numbers. I communicated with Mark only through text and email, keeping it strictly focused on the logistics of separation and divorce. I hired a lawyer immediately, which I think sent a clear message that I was serious. Seeing your comments about Mark showing his true colors really resonated. Many of you pointed out that his inaction was just as abusive as their actions, and you are absolutely right. He consistently chose their comfort over my well-being. His desperate attempts to get me back weren't about love. They were about losing his convenient buffer, his scapegoat, and probably the person who managed his entire domestic life. Some people asked about the other family members at the party. From what I heard indirectly through my sister, who has a mutual friend with one of Mark's cousins, the reaction was mixed. Apparently, some of the extended family were shocked by my outburst, buying into the narrative that I was unstable or overly dramatic. However, a few others, particularly a couple of the aunts, later admitted to Mark's cousin that they had always found Carol and Skylar difficult and had noticed how poorly they treated me over the years. They apparently felt awkward but didn't want to interfere. So, my dramatic exit might have actually opened some eyes, or at least confirmed suspicions. The process of separating our lives is ongoing, but I already feel like a massive weight has been lifted. I found a lovely apartment in a part of town I always liked. I am pouring energy into my freelance graphic design business, and it is thriving. I am reconnecting with friends I had neglected because Mark's family demands took up so much time and energy. I'm even cooking and baking again, just for myself and my sister, and guess what? It is enjoyable again. No one is grimacing or comparing it to some mythical perfect version. Thank you again, Reddit. Your support has been a huge boost during a difficult transition. I will post another update if there are significant developments. For now, I am focusing on healing and building my new, much happier life. Update 2. Hello again, Reddit. It has been several months since my last update, and things have definitely progressed. First off, thank you again for the continued messages of support and encouragement. It meant the world to me during the initial rough patch. Life is looking significantly brighter now, and I wanted to share the final chapter of this saga, complete with the satisfying consequences many of you were curious about. The divorce is now finalized. It was relatively straightforward, thankfully. We didn't have children, and our finances weren't overly complicated. Mark initially tried to drag things out, probably hoping I would give up or change my mind. He even suggested marriage counseling at one point, which I firmly declined. I told him, through my lawyer, that the time for counseling was years ago, when I was begging him to support me against his family's abuse. His failure to act then had irrevocably broken the marriage. He eventually accepted it and signed the papers. Now for the juicy bits, the consequences for Mark, Carol, and Skylar. As many of you predicted, things did not go well for them after I left. It turns out, I wasn't just Mark's wife. I was the social glue, the event planner, the emotional punching bag, and the free labor that kept their little family ecosystem running, however toxically. Mark's life apparently took a significant downturn. Without me managing the household, paying bills on time, organizing his social calendar, even the dreaded family events, and generally keeping things running smoothly, he struggled. His house became messy, he missed appointments, and according to that mutual friend of my sister's, he started looking generally disheveled and stressed. More significantly, his performance at work apparently suffered. Mark works in sales, a job that requires a certain level of charm and organization. His boss apparently noticed the decline in his numbers and his increasingly negative attitude. While I don't know the exact details, the rumor is he was put on a performance improvement plan. This wasn't direct revenge from me, but rather the natural consequence of him losing the support system he took entirely for granted and likely being stressed from the divorce and family fallout. Carol and Skylar did not escape unscathed either. My dramatic exit from the birthday party apparently became the talk of their extended family and social circle. While some initially sided with them, the story, combined with the accounts from the few relatives who admitted they saw the mistreatment, started to shift the narrative. Carol, who always cared deeply about appearances and her social standing, found herself getting colder shoulders at church events and community gatherings. People who used to fawn over her started keeping their distance. Her attempts to paint me as the villain apparently backfired, making her look bitter and cruel, especially since Mark was clearly floundering without me. Skylar faced her own kind of fallout. Her smugness relies heavily on having an audience and people who buy into her perceived superiority. With me gone, and with whispers circulating about her and Carol's behavior, her social capital took a hit. The mutual friend reported that Skylar complained about friends being distant and that she felt unfairly judged. Apparently, Constantly tearing down her brother's wife wasn't the universally admired trait she thought it was. Who knew? It seems karma, or perhaps just social consequences, finally caught up with them. They created a toxic environment, drove me away, and are now reaping what they sowed. Mark is struggling, and their own reputations are tarnished. One specific incident stands out. A few months after the divorce was final, Mark apparently tried to host a small get-together himself, maybe for Easter. He asked Carol and Skylar for help. According to the grapevine, it was a complete disaster. Carol and Skylar apparently spent the whole time bickering with each other and criticizing Mark's attempts at cooking and hosting, basically giving him a taste of the medicine they had force-fed me for years. Mark supposedly lost his temper with both of them, something he had never dared to do before. It sounds like without me as the common enemy and scapegoat, their toxic dynamic turned inward. Poetic justice, perhaps. As for me, I am genuinely happy. My business is doing better than ever. I have landed several major clients, and I am loving the creative freedom. I have strengthened my friendships and reconnected with my own family, who are wonderful and supportive. I have even started dating again, very casually, but it is nice to meet people who treat me with basic respect and kindness from the outset. I am rediscovering hobbies I had let slide, including cooking whatever the hell I want without fear of snide remarks about puff pastry or lava cake consistency. My new apartment feels like a sanctuary, filled only with things I love and positive energy. Looking back, the biggest lesson I learned is the importance of self-respect and boundaries. I tolerated unacceptable behavior for far too long, hoping things would change or that Mark would suddenly become the partner I needed him to be. Walking out was the hardest, but best, decision I ever made. It forced me to prioritize my own well-being and showed me that I am strong enough to build a life on my own terms. Never let anyone, not even family or the person you love, diminish your worth or treat you like you are less than. Your peace and happiness matter. So thank you, Reddit, for being a sounding board and providing clarity when I needed it most. For anyone stuck in a similar situation, please know that you deserve better, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Life on the other side can be surprisingly beautiful. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.